Greetings, everyone. This is Jason Weller with Truterra. I'm the Vice President of the Sustainability Business at Truterra at Land O'Lakes. And we're very excited to be hosting today's panel. I'll be moderating this session. And we're joined by three national leaders who are each representing their companies and their role in this emerging opportunities of where soil health, big data, and new protocol and accounting standards meet to ultimately advance regenerative agriculture. So the title of this panel discussion is Bridging Big Data, Tech Innovation, and On-Farm Reality. And it is a huge and exciting opportunity here today, and I really appreciate you all taking a few minutes to visit with our panelists and hear their expertise. So let me first set up what the challenge is. The challenge is you have still very complex science, a variety of gaps, and how do we help farmers using that science to identify practice change on the farm that's going to be good for crop production and animal production, but then also link those practices to soil health practices and ultimately to new revenue opportunities. And you have now folks that are very excited by this opportunity to advance soil health, to create new revenue opportunities for farmers. But the challenge is really how do we scale these new systems, not just on thousands or tens of thousands of acres, but on millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of acres. So this is going to take new technology, new framework, and new thinking on how we really accelerate this at the pace we're going to need if we're going to solve these big systemic challenges. So the opportunity is we have world-renowned organizations that are really putting their best minds to think about how to tackle these challenges for the benefit of agriculture. And so I'd like to introduce our panel, who are going to then walk us through their thinking and where the opportunities lie. And I'm going to introduce in the order we're going to be talking today, and then we're going to just turn to the panelists and allow them to introduce themselves. So who we have joining us is Michelle Lancaster with Microsoft. We have Thomas Blackburn with SustainCERT, and Dr. Wayne Honeycutt with the Soil Health Institute. So my first question is going to be to Michelle. Greetings, Michelle. Great to have you today. And it's everyone is familiar with Microsoft, a world-renowned global leader in technology, an emerging leader in ag technology, and an emerging leader in this whole concept on soil health and how to help farmers generate new assets of ecosystem credits. So can you please introduce yourself and of course the Microsoft team, and ultimately what is Microsoft doing in this emerging space of soil health and asset generation?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jason. Happy to be here today. I'm delighted, as always, to be with folks that we work with really closely on the carbon space. I think, 5 years ago, people might have wondered why Microsoft is in this conversation. Do you really need Word or Excel out on the farm in the field? But we're so much more than that. These days, we're really a cloud and AI and big data company. And even more than that, we are intending to be a platform company that enables other companies, other people, and other organizations to build on the back of our data infrastructure and to really make it easier for you all to do what you need to do as you sustainably transform your businesses and work with others to do the exact same. Really excited to be here today. One of the reasons that we're here together is Microsoft and Land O'Lakes have been working together for a long time, but just this year really deepened and solidified our relationship in this particular area. We made an agreement to build out not only an ag tech platform, but to also continue to build that prowess into how we look at regenerative agriculture and specifically with an eye towards carbon. We know that when it comes to soil sequestration, we think the science is pretty well established, but the process to actually both change behavior and then to be compensated for a change in behavior not really matched up. We know that there's a market need, both in terms of sequestration capabilities. Microsoft is one of those companies that is purchasing at least 1 million tons of CO2 removal a year right now, and we are joined by many, many others. So there's a lot of market demand for these projects. We know that there's a ton of interest in how do you transition agriculture from an area of greenhouse emissions into the natural sink and the asset that it really is to the world. And really, how do you unlock all of those benefits beyond just a carbon credit or a carbon paycheck, all of those things that continue to yield dividends for farmers. And so that's really what we're excited to do this year with Land O'Lakes and Truterra, is how to build out that technology platform that makes it much easier, much faster and much less expensive to answer all of those questions to really shorten that gap. We think that the combination of sensor technology, the advent of some new innovations we have in satellite and LiDAR make it much easier for us to see not just what's happening on the field, but what's happening in the soil as a result of those practices. That should make it easier for certification, also easier for people to understand how behavior change is happening over time. And then when you add in the predictive analytics and the AI work that we've been able to do around soil health, around yield, time to plant, time to sow, fertilizer, the rest of the diagnostics that have really been delivered for years, we just see this really natural marriage, not just between Microsoft and Land O'Lakes, but between technology and agriculture to get better yields, find new avenues of revenue, and to really make sure that people are changing behavior, seeing the benefits of change behavior, because we think that begets a lot more. For us, it's really about how we can play a role with our capital, as we are a purchaser. We think we can send a market signal in what we ask to buy and how we work with others to prepare the market that way. We also see ourselves as a technology platform provider. The sort of key 3 T's in the space for us are really trust, transparency, and transformation. And we don't think that we can get to that level of behavior change on the field or with organizational demand without building out the trust and transparency on what's actually happening, let people get into that. And that's what we do. We've been working on business insights and analytics for every organization in the world for years. And it just makes sense that we are getting out of the boardroom and out of supply chain and into the field. We couldn't be happier to be doing that with Land O'Lakes.
Thank you, Michelle. Super exciting and very compelling, and a really clear articulation of Microsoft's role. And I really like the 3 T's. That's a great way to frame it. And that's actually a great segue to Thomas. So Thomas, we have the 3 T's. And I really see that as foundational for what SustainCERT's role here is in the trust and transparency to facilitate the transformation. So can you talk a little bit about SustainCERT and your role as an organization to help facilitate the 3 T's? But then also a little bit of, I guess, looking back in SustainCERT's experience in carbon markets that have preceded us, but really what makes the emerging opportunities in the agricultural carbon market space so unique. Thomas?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this panel. It's a great opportunity to speak with you all. We're also really excited by a lot of the developments that are happening in this space. Truterra's work to develop a scalable system for measuring greenhouse gas change is really exciting. So I am the business development director in the United States for SustainCERT. We are a relatively new company, but we've been in carbon markets for a long time. You might say that that's our sort of unique selling point. We have a plan to rapidly adopt technology to enable scalability, much like you're hearing from Microsoft and Truterra today. So all of these things are, I think, what we're all excited about. SustainCERT is the official certification body to Gold Standard. So you can think about it where Gold Standard is a rule-setting body. SustainCERT is the body that's actually making decisions, helping organizations projects make sure that they meet the rules and requirements of Gold Standard. So we are the official certification body in that. We were founded with this mantra where we really want to make the verification and certification process better, meaning more transparent and consistent, faster, meaning reducing the time to verification of impact, and cheaper, mainly as a function of the first 2, right? We want to do that as we raise the bar on quality and accuracy, not diminishing it in these markets as well. And we think that we can achieve that by a lot of the emerging technology that you all are talking about today. SustainCERT's ultimate mission is to take complexity away from project developers and bring it back into the systems that we use to verify and certify projects. So the more that we can make this process easier on those who actually have to participate in it and get good information and the right information from them the first time, provide more guidance on those things and use technology to make all of those things better, faster, and cheaper, that's what SustainCERT's all about. So with that in mind, of course, agriculture is an extremely complex system with unique challenges within sort of carbon markets. The carbon market rules and requirements were created mostly based on renewable energy and energy efficiency projects. In those projects, you can do a really clear investment analysis on starting those projects. You flip a switch and you can read a meter and you can have really clear data on the impact that you're making, and that those emissions, carbon emissions, have changed over time. We know, I think all of us here, that agriculture is almost nothing like this, right? It's a complex system. Farmers may or may not complete an investment analysis on a practice change that they implement. We know sequestration occurs in the soils, but it's also subject to intense variability due to weather impacts. We know that agriculture shifts on an annual basis. What people grow changes. Farmers often sort of rent land versus owning it, right? And so these add to the complexities for agriculture in carbon markets. And I could say that there's probably 3 challenges that agriculture faces when accessing carbon markets in the past, which is 1, on additionality. Are we sure that this limited amount of money that we have going towards making climate change, changing the needle on climate, is going to support real new practice change? The second is on permanence. Can we guarantee that an offset represents a ton of carbon removed from the atmosphere for many, many years into the future, and making sure that we're moving the needle on climate again? And then third, on the cost effectiveness of measurement. Soil sampling has, in the past been considered the most accurate and what carbon markets wanted to see, but so far it hasn't proven to be extremely cost effective to enable these projects to actually reach carbon markets. So how we solve these challenges is a question that SustainCERT cares deeply about. Like Microsoft, like Truterra, we're seeing developments in technology to increase accuracy of measurement, data collection, helping build new models to make soil quantification more robust, as extremely exciting, and especially when it comes to being more cost effective. On those permanence and additionality questions, we've seen a few standards start to adopt new ways of looking at additionality and permanence to mitigate some of the risk of those pieces. Some of the market players sort of claiming that carbon markets are broken and that those things need to be fixed because they're too stringent or inappropriate for ag. SustainCERT and Gold Standard aren't necessarily of that opinion. We do think that markets, we don't really think that markets are broken because of the rules. We think that we need to ensure environmental integrity. We need to look back 10 years from now and say we've actually achieved something, right? We think that there's massive reform that that's needed on increasing transparency for buyers so that they understand the risks inherent in certain types of carbon offsets that they may buy. We also really want to increase the speed and consistency in verification and certification, and decrease the costs of MRV that's put on to farmers, right, to implement these programs. So again, coming back to that better, faster, cheaper, which aligns very much with what Microsoft has said. So, I mean, for us overall, the key question moving forward is how can we use technology and use these pieces to overcome these challenges on cost effectiveness, additionality, and permanence, and make sure that we meet our global goals on climate, right? I mean, that's really where we sit, and we're excited to see where the work takes us and see what's coming next.
Fantastic. Thank you, Thomas. And between you and Michelle, you both have just led a master class in 3 minutes each on topics we could spend several hours on. So recognizing kind of the brief moment we have here, no pressure, Wayne, but kind of our kind of the third at bat here, bases are loaded. Soil health, right? Even going back to the Latin meaning of alma mater, the nourishing mother, right? All this is about, the preceding conversation is really about how do we protect and enhance the function and performance of soils. So can you talk about, I guess, the importance of soil health systems really to energize and be part of this transformational project that we're all involved in, that ultimately address what Thomas is talking about, which is really additionality and permanence, but also is in a way that will frankly work for also a key word for Land O'Lakes is about production, is feeding us.
Yeah.
So how can you make sense of where soil health systems really play into this emerging opportunity, and where Soil Health Institute is also contributing to what everyone is talking about?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I think soil health is really at the nexus of all of these things. There's no doubt. And, you know, I think soil health is just one of those paramount opportunities that we have right now, because it's one of those rare situations where what's good for the farmer is good for the environment. It's going to allow us to address climate change and water quality and all these things like the people in the corporate social responsibility world, you know, that they're needing to quantify. And we are increasingly learning how to quantify soil health, which is going to allow us to establish how far we need to go, but also measure our progress. And so we're really excited about some of the research that we've been doing in that area. One of the things that, you know, that farmers are increasingly challenged by is climate change, extreme weather events, all the way from drought to heavy precipitation. But by looking at soil health, we can improve their available water holding capacity. And some of our recent research is now giving us the equations that where we can predict changes in available water holding capacity by storing more carbon. And of course, that ties right back into what you're talking about here with carbon credits. So even if we need to wait a little while for a particular like market, perhaps to go online, we can still already start to work with farmers and show them those benefits. And so that they can prove that we can prove to them that they can increase their available water holding capacity and therefore drought resilience. But also by storing more carbon in the soil, we can build what we call soil aggregates. That's where the individual sand, silt, and clay particles bind together. And when they bind together, you can kind of think of them as little clumps, essentially, use a real technical term, clumps. There's more porosity between those aggregates. And so what that means is now you can get more water infiltration. So when you get that heavy rain, which is also another result of climate change, that now more water is infiltrating in. So now less water is running off. That means less nutrients are running off into our streams and rivers and lakes. Then it also means that now the farmer is losing fewer nutrients through that runoff, and also even being leached. Some of the practices like cover crops, a pretty common practice for improving soil health. One of the values of those cover crops is not just helping retain in soil in place, but now because you can have a deeper rooting system that can now essentially recycle those nutrients back to the surface. So now the farmer can reduce their inputs and input costs and stay more profitable in the long term. But also, again, there's fewer nutrients now that's leached to the groundwater. So soil health is just one of those rare opportunities where we can really address these big challenges that farmers are increasingly up against, like climate change, like the need to show that they're having good benefits on the environment, like on water quality, increased biodiversity. And increasingly, we are now able to quantify those benefits. It's not just a matter of looking back into the literature, which we're doing a lot of this based on what that peer-reviewed scientific literature has shown us are valid and appropriate ways of addressing these issues. But we're not just having to rely on it. Now we're able to really quantify changes, and in many respects, some of the tools that Thomas and Michelle spoke about, we're able to quantify some of those changes in real time that we're having. And so it's a very, very exciting time. And so I'll turn it back over to you, Jason.
Wayne, thank you. Again, it's another master's class, and I think of the importance of how soil health systems really link all of this together and provide new opportunities to growers, new opportunities to livestock producers, new opportunities, of course, for new value-added agriculture revenue generation, which is really exciting. So in the time permitting, I'd love to continue the conversation, but I think we're going to now transition to the Q&A portion. So for those that are participating in this panel, thank you very much for your time today. And then I look forward to seeing you all in the live Q&A session. And so for those that are watching this, we look forward to engaging you in the next few minutes. And please bring your questions for this world-class panel and their deep expertise. I know they'd love to engage with you all. So we'll visit with you next. Thank you.